Hi, my name is Danny, and this is a run through of how to play Haven Titan Command. Within the core set, there are 4 decks to choose from, each representing a different faction with their own unique Titan and pilot. The Go'er, the Phalon, the Virilis and the Ravens. For this I will choose the Go'er, my opponent picks the Phalon, and if you're playing a 4-player game you can use the 2 other decks, but I'll just remove these. So this represents everything that your Titan and pilot have, such as equipment, field skills and manoeuvres. We start the game by taking the faction card, which represents your turn order, and placing it to the side, along with the Titan card, which has some key information. The locations, which represent real places within the Haven Galaxy, get placed to one side, and all the equipment and field skills get shuffled to form your supply deck, and you place this to the side. Now the aim of Haven Titan Command is to pilot your Titan and destroy all your opponents. We do this by destroying what we call core bays. Each Titan has 3 core bays. Each core bay has 10 strength, so each Titan has 30 strength. When a Titan loses all its strength, it is considered destroyed, and that player would be out of the game. This is how we set up the game, and your opponent would do the same. Once you've both done this, we can move to the arm phase. Haven Titan Command is played in rounds, which are split into phases. Round 1 begins with the arm phase. To start this, we will draw 7 cards. My opponent would do the same. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I would look at my cards and decide which ones I would like to keep. So I will keep 5, and I will set aside the ones I don't want, and I will set aside these 2, and I will draw back up to 7 cards. So you could discard your entire hand if you would like and draw a whole new 7 cards. So I will draw back 2 and shuffle back all the cards that I didn't want. Shuffle those, and this would now be my starting hand. So the arm phase represents each Titan in their hangar, arming themselves up ready to fight. So to do this, we would decide a priority player by the roll of a dice. For example, I won, and I would arm first. So because we can't see the other Titan, we do this face down, and we do this in turns. So I will take the first turn, and I will arm a core equipment. My opponent would then arm a core equipment, or whichever equipment they would like. I will then arm a second equipment, which is an offense in this case. My opponent would do the same, and I will arm another one. My opponent would arm a third. I will arm a fourth. This is going into this bay because it's actually an upgrade equipment, which buffs the other cards that are in that bay. My opponent would then arm a fourth. Now, instead of arming, I'm actually quite happy. I've got a core and I've got some offense equipment. So what I'm going to do is declare to launch. This will give me the initiative because I'm the first one out of the blocks. So because I've declared launch, my opponent in retaliation will get to arm 1 further equipment to their Titan because they're a little bit slower. We now arm manoeuvres. So bearing in mind we have a manoeuvre limit, which in my case is 2, but I will only arm the 1. This is done face down as well, but it also stays face down because it's a surprise. We now reveal our equipment because we've met each other almost on the battlefield. We reveal all our equipment, and here you can see I have a core and 2 offense, 1 which is upgraded. We then generate the fuel. So in my case, I have 20 fuel, and the opponent would also gain their fuel. At the beginning in this arm phase, each Titan also starts with 5 fuel, which we'll place on the Titan card. The last thing to consider when arming is the mass limit. Each Titan has a unique mass limit which represents its physical attributes. In this case, my mass limit is 28,000, and each equipment I have has a mass limit, in this case 8,000, 2,000, 4,000. At no point in the game can the total mass of all cards armed to your Titan exceed this mass limit, and as you can see, I'm well within that limit. Navigation phase. This is the phase where we decide where the battle is to be located. Because I launched, I get the priority token, which means I get the initiative. So I look at my location deck, which are tiered into round 1, round 2 and round 3. For example, on round 3 I could decide to navigate to either a round 1, round 2 or round 3 location. Because this is round 1, I can only navigate to the round 1, which is dead space. So I declare that I wish to navigate to this location for its navigation cost, which here is 1 fuel. So I remove 1 fuel and we are now attempting to navigate to this location. My opponent, however, can resist this. Maybe they don't want to go to this location, and they do that by paying the resist cost. In this case, it is 3. My opponent declares that they don't wish to for this instance because they want to use their fuel for something else. So we are now considered to be in this location, which is dead space, which means players cannot use the supply action. So I take this location and put it in the combat zone, which is between the 2 players. All players are considered to be at 1 location. If, however, I decided that I didn't want to navigate, my opponent would get the opportunity to do so. So if I didn't want to use my fuel to go, maybe I already liked the location or I didn't have the fuel to navigate, my opponent would then choose their location and then I could decide to resist that too. Following the navigation phase, we enter the combat phase, which represents the Titans meeting in battle. In the combat phase, each player takes 5 turns in turn order. Because I'm the priority player, I will take the first turn. So on a turn, a player can take a primary action, a secondary action, and any number of free actions. So a primary action consists of activating a primary command of equipment that is armed to your Titan. A primary action is also activating a field skill from your hand. And as a primary action, you can also use what's called the supply action, which means drawing a card and arming something from your hand if you wish to. However, because we're in dead space during this combat round, I can't actually use the supply action. After a primary action, players can then use a secondary action, which means activating the secondary command of any armed equipment. During their turn, they can also use any amount of free actions. Some equipment will have free actions, which means they can be used immediately and can be used time and time again. A free action also means activating a maneuver that has been armed. So for my example first turn, I will activate the primary command of one of my armed equipment. So I will have a look and I will activate this one. And this is an offense equipment which deals damage. So I will take a damage block of value 3. So I will take 3 value here. It has 2 damage types, which is in this case ballistic and explosive, and I will remove the fuel, which the cost is 3. So I will remove 3 to activate that command. This turn I don't wish to activate a secondary command, so my turn is over. It will pass to my opponent, and on their turn, as a primary action, they will deal some damage back to me. So they create a damage block. Let's say, for example, it was 5 damage incoming to me. And as a secondary action, they would reduce this damage from 3 to 1, and then they would resolve it on their Titan. So that would end their turn. So now it is my second turn, and we can use here a little token to move this on to turn 2. So my primary action, looking at my hand, is to activate a field skill. So the field skills are one-shot deals. So this costs 4 fuel. So I'll remove the 5 and put the 1 back. So reading this one out. So what I will do is I will gain a damage block with value 6. So I take a damage block and I will put 6 damage in it. So it's slightly more damage than my offense equipment. However, it's only the one, I can only use it once. And it also pierces, which means my opponent can't reduce the damage like he did on his last turn. So once you've activated a field skill as a primary, they go into your scrap pile. So now, what I will do as a secondary action, but before my secondary action, I'm actually going to activate this maneuver, which we put face up there so we can read it. And what it does is increase the damage of my next attack by 2, and it gives it lock-on, which is a function, and a function is a shorthand way of explaining a rule or a term. So here it will increase my next activation. So my next activation is this command, which is a secondary. So it usually does 2 damage. Now, however, because of my maneuver, it does 4 damage. So that's my maneuver used, which also goes into the scrap pile once activated. So what I do is I remove the fuel for the equipment and also the fuel for the maneuver, which totals 5. And then I will get to put 4 damage into a damage block. So a second damage block has been created, which means an opponent now has to defend 2. So that will end my actions, but now I have to resolve my incoming damage. I have 5 damage incoming, which, because I'm the defender, I get to decide on which core I'm going to defend the damage. I can't split this damage up. For example, I couldn't put 2, 2 and 2 damage. I have to resolve it as a whole. Because I'm the defender, I get to decide. However, if I'd have used the lock-on command, I could decide where my damage would be to resolve. My opponent didn't use lock-on, so I will just resolve it in this empty bay. And that is that damage resolved. My opponent now has incoming damage, and they will then take their second turn. The combat phase is over when all players have taken 5 turns. Once all players have completed their 5 turns, so let's assume that's happened, and all the damage has been resolved, the combat phase ends, and we move on to the disengage phase. The disengage phase stops at any lasting effects and conditions and marks the end of the round. Because I was the priority player, I will pass the token on to the next player, and they begin round 2 as the priority player. So round 2 and each subsequent round begins with the supply phase. This represents each Titan being back in their hangar and rearranging their build ready to fight again. So we start this by each player drawing a card, and beginning with a priority player scrapping any equipment that they no longer wish to have armed to their Titan. After they've scrapped their equipment, they can then arm new equipment from their hand. So for example, I no longer wish to have this equipment, and I will arm a new core equipment. This is my new build ready for the next combat phase. Once all players have finished arming their new equipment, we generate fuel. This run, for example, generates 5 fuel. Players can then arm face down any new maneuvers, and we head into the navigation phase. My opponent is the priority player, and so they would get to choose a round 1 or a round 2 location to navigate to. The game will continue in this manner until one Titan has been reduced to 0 strength.